Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good whenever you are listening to this. This is the League One preview podcast. Review podcast. In fact, brought to you by the lower league. Look at that. It took me 20 seconds to mess up, but that's absolutely
Well, we're going to
fine.
do some previewing later. It's a review and a preview today.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. So we're going to split sort of things slightly into two halves. So the first half will be reviewing the last weekend fixtures, and then the second half will be previewing some of the games that are going to take place later on this week. Some very tasty fixtures as well. And as usual, joined by Mr. Jamie Johnson. Jamie, how are we doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Seb. How are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah, good. Busy weekend, but lots of League One football, lots of exciting League One football as well.
Yeah, they always are busy weekends, they seem to be, but there's some good games to talk about today. So it's
certainly so.
I know you'll have plenty to say about the Barnsley games. So.
Yeah, you know it. Yeah, I'll be. You'll not be able to shut up about that because it's going good for the Reds so far, which is very good. But I want to start with something that's pretty recent at the time that we're recording. So, and that is that Garry Monk has made a return back to management, and not only has he made a return back to management, he's come all the way down to League One. And so that was when they came through this afternoon, I sort of had to look at it twice. Garry Monk, just been appointed Cambridge's new manager on, I believe, a 2-year deal. Until 2026. So 2 years. What was your reaction when you saw that news, Jamie? Because I was pretty shocked, really.
But it just popped up on my Twitter, and I read it and went, "No, I thought maybe it was a slow Sky News."
Yeah.
And I thought, no, and then I looked and went, "No, that's actually happened," and I'm still a bit surprised by it. I don't really know what to make of it. He's not had a first team managerial job since 2020. Obviously, he's been to Swansea, Leeds, Sheff Wednesday, probably the three places he's most well known for, but Middlesbrough and Birmingham as well. And so he's got experience a little bit higher up. I was quite surprised he's dropped down to sort of the dregs of League One. He's one of those like Darren Moore the other week, where he's gone from a Championship manager to a bottom of League One manager, sort of seemingly out of nowhere. And yeah, it's a weird appointment. It's obviously, like we've said there, 4 years is a long time to be without a club in terms of first team manager. And I'm sure he's probably done some coaching in that 4 years. I can't imagine he's just been sat doing nothing. He must have been doing some sort of coaching. Maybe it's a sort of a junior coaching academy, something like that. I don't know. But the fact that it's his first full-time managing job since 2020, and it's a weird situation because they're one of the teams that could sort of get dragged into a relegation concern if results don't swing in the right direction. So a strange one, I think, that they've sort of put trust in someone who's been probably wouldn't be an obvious appointment. He's not someone that's been around League One and managing first team football for 4 years, like we've said a couple of times. So it just reads like a strange appointment, but it could be one that comes out really well if we could all be proven wrong and it turns out it'll be a masterstroke that Garry Monk's back in management and he propels Cambridge up the table. But I'm not too sure myself. So,
what do you think sort of the Cambridge fans are feeling at this moment in time, given that they did have so before Monk came in, they did have the other manager. I can't remember his name. What was he called?
Neil Harris.
Neil Harris. That's it. Yeah, because he's done three leagues this season. They did have Neil Harris. They've done all right under Neil Harris. Not particularly sort of ripping up trees, but not in the dangers that they were probably at this point last season. Currently sitting 19th. Garry Monk has just come in. 4 points adrift of safety. What do you think sort of the reaction is around the club at the moment, and do you think the appointment of Garry Monk has perhaps helped that reaction and helped that atmosphere around the club?
Well, I'm just having I knew that question was coming there, and I thought I'd have a bit of a scroll through Twitter, and I've not found a bad reply yet to the post about him being manager. Maybe the funniest one is that the Monk is in the Abbey, which I'm very happy about. That's fantastic. So. Yeah, but there doesn't seem to be any sort of negativity. But obviously, it's a very small sample size, isn't it? It all comes on results, doesn't it? If he performs well, first couple of games, picks out a result or two, then it'll be the best appointment ever. And then if it comes bad these first few games, then I'm sure the apple cart will sort of be tipped. But I think it's just a wait and see sort of thing. It's hard to judge someone like that who's been out of management for a few years, and he's got a point to prove. I think that's the key thing to mention, in that he's been given a chance by Cambridge. I guess that's probably how you would describe it, that he's had to drop down a level to get that chance, and he's got to take it with both hands, because if he sort of fails there, he's failed at a few clubs, if we're honest, that and had fallen out at a couple of clubs and that sort of thing. And it's maybe it's a now or never sort of thing for Garry Monk, that if it goes wrong again, then maybe you can kiss goodbye to being a Championship manager again. So maybe that will sort of spur him on and spur the team on. And I mean, if we can sort of create some sort of culture that the fans can buy into, then even if it's just between now and the end of the season, just to sort of pick up a bit of momentum to propel him into the summer, and obviously keep them in the league is the first protocol. But there's a lot of bad teams in the division. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But so I reckon they should be fine. But it's one of those. It's a interesting, strange, surprising. But yeah, it could come out to be a great appointment. We just have to. I think we have to sit and wait and see.
I'd imagine that some people are slightly apprehensive, given, like you mentioned earlier, that he's not actually been in a sort of a number one position since he got sacked at Sheffield Wednesday in November of 2020. Do you think that could be slightly off-putting, in that, you know, such a long period out of the game? Yes, he might have been working on other smaller projects, but to come into the Cambridge as they are in the position in the league that they are, is it quite apprehensive, the fact that he's been out for so long, and then to come in and take quite a high pressure job in quite a high pressured moment in the season?
I think it's a risk. I think it's definitely a risk, but he's obviously was going to have to drop down from the Championship. That's what I guess where like you'd sort of peg him at 4 years ago. He's a Championship manager. He's obviously going to have to drop down from that to a lower League One, or even a League Two side. I mean, people like Mark Hughes have been managing League Two. Nigel Adkins is managing a League Two team.
Yeah,
I mean, there's some managers in League Two, beg pardon, that should not be League Two. Phil Parkinson, even at Wrexham, and there's a lot of managers about. There's a lot of good managers about, and there's a lot of them who are coming up. And Garry Monk's sort of one that's he's got himself a job. Maybe that's just the main thing, that he's got himself a first team managing job, and that pressure, he's coming in it straight away. I mean, I've had a quick glance at the table, and they're 4 points clear of relegation. That's 2 games, isn't it? You know what I mean? And it's a perilous position. He's got to hit the ground running, and at a team that sort of there's a manager, that hasn't been in a first team job for a number of years. That it's going to take him time to adjust. I feel that he's going to have to maybe take a couple of games to get himself back into it before he can even sort of impact himself on the players. And the 4 games without a win. I mean, they're playing Bolton twice and Peterborough and Stevenage, so it's not the best sample size to pick from a team sort of where Cambridge are. But it's one of those. I think he's got to hit the ground running, and I really don't think that's an easy task for him at all.
No, I'd agree with it. I just, I do think he's a good manager, and when he first took over at Swansea, he was sort of deemed as a really top quality.
He was the next big thing, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. He was sort of developing. He did really well at Swansea, and then like you said, he had a couple of dodgy spells at Wednesday, at Birmingham, at Middlesbrough. Just didn't quite fit for him. But to take such a long time out of the game, which 4 years in this modern day is quite a long time.
Yeah.
I'm just not quite sure how I feel about it. Yes, he in his prime he was a good manager. Sort of at the Premier League, if not high Championship level. I'm not sure how to feel about him taking on this job in what is sort of, we are now getting to the business end of the season, where teams like Cambridge, who are sort of just loitering just above the drop zone, do need points to stop getting dragged into themselves. And take Barnsley, for example. If we'd have got him, yes, he's a good manager, sort of proven past. I'd feel a little bit awkward about it, really, because he's not sort of recently proven himself anywhere.
I think it is similar. Obviously, the time sort of away from the game is totally different from Darren Moore. He had sort of 2 months out of the game, not 4 years. But I think the same thing remains in that he's a big name, and when Darren Moore was signed, it was a coup, wasn't it? Like that he's managed to Port Vale have managed to get him in, and that's not worked out so far. And Garry Monk is sort of he's got a big name and he's got a big reputation in the jobs he's been at. He's been at some really big teams and some teams that have demand success in a way. And I think it's a difficult job, but is there an easy job in football? I don't know. So it's an interesting one. I think I just keep going back to that. It's just interesting and just to see how it will go. And they've got Lincoln not on Saturday, but on the Tuesday, the 12th. So his first away game, I'll be there for that one. And it'll be interesting to see what his team looks like, if he's changed anything in the time he's been away. Maybe his tactics have evolved. And I mean, you've got to hope so, haven't you? So it's. I think it's just a wait and see. Like I've said, it's a strange appointment picking someone who's been out of first team management, but it's got to be done sometimes, hasn't it? I guess it's one of those. He's got a track record, and maybe it's worth a risk sometimes. So I'm sort of reserving judgment a little bit until they lose to Lincoln next Tuesday, and then I can say, "Oh, it's dreadful, this, that, and the other." So I'll see how they perform on that one. It's quite an interesting look, that one. I think
I'm going to
live.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I'm going to pick your brain finally before in terms of this topic before we move on to discuss about the top five. You said you were reserving judgment. You gave politicians' answers, I like to call them, quite wishy-washy, but we might do well. We'll just have to see. Jamie Johnson, I need an answer. Will Cambridge, now under Garry Monk, formerly of Sheffield, Jamie Middlesbrough, Birmingham and Swansea, and Leeds, I had a little spell there as well, will they survive relegation from League One this season? He's done it again.
Yes.
Done it again.
Yes.
Done it again.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
I'm just taking time. You got to think about these things, Seb. You got to think about these things. There's a lot of teams down there. I had to remember all the teams down there, but I'll land on yes. I'm teetering onto yes. There you are. Go on, you have to answer. Go on, then. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think they'll do it. Yeah, I think they'll survive. I'm not sure. I think they would have survived otherwise, like without Garry Monk.
I think, to be honest, I'd be more worried about Burton than I would be about Cambridge. There's only 1 point above them.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you look at we'll talk about it in the second half, I guess, in more detail. But I reckon they've got a very good chance at the teams down there.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I do think Cambridge. I don't think that the sort of appointment of Monk is a sort of a panic thing to keep up from relegation, because I think the club are pretty confident they'll be able to do it. That being said, it's only 4 points, so I guess as James said, we will see. We'll reserve judgment and see. No, so that's it. Yeah, Garry Monk. So that's sort of the latest managerial appointment in the division. And that appointment was made on Monday afternoon. We'll now sort of switch backwards, if you like, to chat about the results which took place on Saturday. So yeah, all the League One clubs were in action on Saturday afternoon. And we'll start by looking at the top five. So for those that don't know, the top five consists of Plymouth in first, Derby in second, then Bolton, Barnsley, followed by Peterborough, and who's the last one?
Derby.
No, I've said Derby. It'll come back to me. It'll come back. Oxford, that's it. Oxford. It'll come back to me.
Oh, in sixth, Oxford. Yeah.
So where should we start, Jamie? Which team? Pick a team.
Well, we talked about Cambridge. Should we talk about their game? They lost 2-0 to Bolton, didn't they? And it's Aaron Collins' first goal for Bolton. It's his first league goal since October, actually. It was quite surprised me, that one, when I saw that. Obviously, I can only really go off stats. It looked a bit of a domination in that respect. 11 shots on target for Bolton against just 1 for Cambridge. And they've bounced back, Bolton. 2 defeats in a row, and they've come back. And I think we talked about it last week, didn't we, that they needed to come back and sort of spark something, because it was quite a heavy defeat against Blackpool, wasn't it? It was all about how they reacted, and they've reacted well. 2-0 win against a team that are struggling, but you've got to beat what's in front of you, and they've managed to do that. So yeah, I think it's a good result, and it sort of keeps them up there, because as I'm sure we'll sort of demonstrate, the top 5, they all won, didn't they? So it's one of those, the win hasn't moved them up. It hasn't left more of a gap between them and the teams below them, but a must that they've sort of kept pace.
Yeah, I agree with him in that sense. In that they lost, as you said, quite heavily away at Blackpool, and then they lost 1-0 away at the rivals Wigan, which is a pretty poor sort of overall result. So they had to get something.
They celebrated like they won the league, though, didn't they? So I mean, they should get the points back.
Yeah, true. They had to get something from the game on Saturday against Cambridge, which they did. Which they, looking for them, they did. But sort of going into that poor form, I just thought, as you mentioned, sort of last week, I just thought if they lose any more, they're just going to erupt and they'll sort of sink, not all the way down, but maybe just scrape playoff spot. Because that's teams once they lose one, they can just go on a sort of a spiral downwards, really. But they have come back. Yes, probably against a side you would expect them to be in Cambridge, but. As you said, you can only beat what's in front of you. And to see Collins scoring his first goal for the club since signing in January, I think that'll be a massive boost. I know we got the assist at home a couple of weeks ago against Barnsley, but that's a massive boost. I think it's a solid result for Bolton.
I think that's exactly it, isn't it? It's just it's a good result, and it's one they sort of needed to bounce back from those two bad results. The one in the really heavy defeat against Blackpool, and then a loss in a Lancashire derby. So it's important that they bounce back, and they've managed to do that. It's sort of, I guess, the other thing to say before we sort of trek to one of the other games is that sort of demonstrate how big a job it is for Garry Monk that Cambridge have only one win in 7 games. And go on, here you are, Seb. Who was that one win against, do you reckon?
1 win in 7. Was it Carlisle?
Yes, it was. It was about 4-0, I think. But it's like, it shows you really that they're only beating the bottom team in their last 7. So it's a difficult place they're in, and a really poor run of form that Garry Monk's going to have to sort of rectify. But yeah, like we said with Bolton, a good win and a domination in terms of the stats. So you can only look at that as a positive result for them.
I'm surprisingly pleased with myself that I got that. I never normally get, like just little throwaway questions. I
teed you up for it nicely. So. I think that's the only one, unless I come up with one as we go along. I think that's the only one.
Yeah, well, okay, I can just sit back a little bit in my chair now. Can breathe a sigh of relief. We'll move from Bolton to the side that are above them in the league, and that is Derby. So they hosted Port Vale at Pride Park on Saturday, and it was a pretty comfortable result, 3-0 to Derby County. But what is pretty significant for Derby is that in his second game for the club, Dwight Gale was on the score sheet.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I saw it. Dwight Gale scored. So all the doubters, he's scored now. So I'm sure it'd be back in the woodwork for them. But it's a. I couldn't believe. I still can't not quite got my head around the fact that Dwight Gale's at Derby, but he scored. Louis Sibley scored the other 2. And again, like we said with Bolton, they've bounced back from back-to-back defeats. Barnsley, of course. And then Charlton, and I'm mainly mentioning that stat just so I can sort of gloat about the fact that I predicted Charlton to win last week in their midweek game. That was my out there prediction, and it's come true. So I was delighted about that. And we'll talk about Charlton obviously later on, so I won't sort of gloat too much. I'll save a bit of the gloating for the second half. But a good win, back in winning ways, which is really what they needed to do. They're level on points with Bolton, ahead on goal difference, but Bolton do have a game in hand. So it's a sort of a one they need to sort of keep pace. There's a lot of teams up there, and they need to keep winning to maintain their spots. On the other end of it, Port Vale winless in 11. They've still not picked up a win in 2024. So great start for Darren Moore.
It's just sense a slight sarcasm in your tone there.
Only just.
I know we're a few weeks off of this, but seeing as they scored, What do you make to the signing of Dwight Gale at Derby?
I think it sort of came out of the blue a little bit, didn't it? That it was available and they wanted a striker because of squad depth. There's sort of few injuries, haven't they? And I think it made sense in that he was available and there was issues in terms of who was injured for Derby. Waghorn's out injured, isn't he? Connor Washington, I think, is out injured still.
Washington Collins as well.
Yeah, so it's one of those. It's like they needed to fill a gap. I thought maybe at the time it was he's available, so we'll get him. But he scored, so he sort of proved my little doubts wrong there. And if he can sort of get on a run and score a few goals between now and the end of the season, then he can be an important part of keeping Derby up there and maybe securing them an automatics place.
Yeah, I think for me, I agree with you, to be fair, in that I proper sort of raised my eyebrows when I saw that come through. I don't think he scored prior to scoring at the weekend. I don't think he'd scored for about a year at Stoke in the Championship. But as you said, Derby had struggled with sort of finding out number 9. They seem to be playing Mendes Lang as sort of a false 9, sort of inverted striker. But that's not him, really. He's a wide player. He's a good wide player. Lewis Sibley has also sort of spent spells of games sort of in that striker position, but no one really could do what James Collins had been doing because there was no other out-and-out number 9 fit and available in the Derby squad. So they clearly brought him in because they needed him. I think Waghorn is starting to come back to full fitness. So it'll be interesting what happens then when Waghorn does come back as to whether they stick with sort of starting Gale and then just bring off Waghorn on the bench, or if they sort of revert stuff and then Gale becomes back up to Waghorn. But either way, there's two sort of experienced strikers and not necessarily always beneficial for Derby, really. But I don't think it's an interesting one. That one. What about the other two in the playoff spots? So we've got Peterborough and we've got Barnsley. Again, both of them winning their games. What do you make of the two results at the weekend regarding the top 5?
So Peterborough 2-1 win against Exeter. It looked like a bit of a back and forth game on sort of the watching and the highlights and that sort of thing. So it was a poker winner there, and it's 3 wins in a row for them now. So they've sort of come back from that really bad stretch they had, didn't they? They had obviously that amazing run through December and over Christmas period and that sort of thing, and then they sort of came out the back of that with a really dreadful run and lost a few games. So they've sort of bounced back nicely, and bouncing back seems to be the theme, doesn't it? I guess that's what winning teams do. They get points when they need to, and it's another 3 points, obviously, for Peterborough here. Exeter only 6 points clear of relegation. It's 4 losses. 4 games without a win for them. I think they have picked up a draw or 2 in there, but they're another one who's sort of looking over their shoulder a little bit. But yeah, as we said, good win for Peterborough. The other one in the playoffs, obviously Barnsley. 4-2 winners there. I'm sure you've got plenty to say about this one, but it just looks, obviously I've not seen it, but it looks a crazy game from a statistical point of view. Wycombe had more XG, if you put any stock in XG. Barnsley, though, had more shots on target, and most importantly, had double the goals. They're on a really good run. They followed up that nice win against Derby. 3 points off the automatics and 2 games in hand. So I'm sure you're like a pig in mud. So you're delighted at how well you're going.
I am slightly apprehensive about the game on Tuesday, but I'm sure we'll come to that, given that is one of our games in hand. But yeah, that result on Saturday was massive, really. To go 1-0 down and to come back, and then to go 2-1 down and to come back, and then to end up winning the game is a great testament to the side. It shows great character and sort of a real sense of a promotion sort of chasing team that just whatever the case, just grinding out results and getting points on board. I think we were a little fortuitous in the Wycombe red card that they received. The player had just been on the pitch a couple of seconds and ended up getting a red card for swiping out. So he came on as a sub, and then there was a goal kick sort of booted, ended up going straight out of play, and Corey O'Keefe, who played left back for Barnsley, just turned to him and must have said something, and just punched him straight in the stomach. So straight red, silly, really,
silly, yeah.
But it was literally. I think it's Wheeler for Wickham, just a couple of seconds on the pitch. So that then gave Barnsley the numerical advantage. So all pretty good, really. And as you said, another tough test in Bolton, which we'll come on to towards the end in terms of previewing the next set of fixtures. But massive result for Barnsley, definitely.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the final game involving the top five, I guess top six as well, but top six didn't win. But Portsmouth, who were currently top of the tree, they did win.
Yeah, 2-1 against Oxford. I think that they've slipped out of the playoffs, haven't they, now? Stevenage are on such a good run themselves. So 2-1 win, like we said, to Portsmouth. Christian Sadie had his first of the season. I think the interesting thing here was Callum Lang scored after just 2 minutes. And you think cracking start. And then up the other end, Cameron Brannigan scored a penalty after 6 minutes. So
exciting
a frantic start there, yeah. I hope you wasn't late. You know what I mean? If you imagine if you turned up a few minutes late, you missed all the action. But yeah. Portsmouth come through, a good win for them, I think. Oxford on a bad run, only 1 win in 10 games, and they've. I guess that's maybe testament to how much teams are taking points off each other, because they've only won 1 game in 10, but they're still within touching distance of the playoffs. So they went from second when Liam Manning left. I feel like I say that every week, but they were second when he left, and they're now sort of scraping to keep themselves in contention for the playoffs. A really poor run there. But on the other end of it, Portsmouth 9 games unbeaten now, and they sort of continue their charge. Injuries be damned, because they're doing so well. I mean, it's really testament to how good a squad they've got and how good Mousinho is, that they've managed to battle through, I guess, what it is, an injury crisis, and they're still top of the league and comfortably. I think it's about 7 points they are clear of the chasing pack, games in hand, sort of. To come. So it's an interesting one to keep an eye on. I keep saying that as well today. Everything's interesting. It's a very interesting time, I think, in the league in general.
It is a really interesting time. I'd say a really interesting time for League One. It's an interesting sort of period of the season where every result counts. We're getting towards that business end, really.
I feel like this is the sort of period where everything falls into place. I know it's something Michael Scabala said a couple of weeks ago in one of his interviews at Lincoln. He was sort of asked, do you think you're going to get playoffs? Is it all sort of over? And he says, end of February, you get an idea. And I feel that's kind of where we are now, obviously, coming into March, that everything's sort of taking shape a little bit, and you can see who's in contention for automatics, who's in contention for playoffs, who's in that relegation fight. And everything's sort of taking shape ever so slowly. And like we've sort of covered there, the top 5 all winning, business as usual. Oxford sort of dropping off a little bit, and they're in a really poor run. So Stevenage there to take advantage, and maybe teams like Leyton Orient, Blackpool, Lincoln, they're Bristol Rovers even, they're sort of looking up at taking that spot off Oxford. So yeah, it's been a good week for the top 5.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. All of the top 5 winning, as you said. We're going to take a slight break, but after that we'll sort of be back to chat a little bit about the relegation, which itself is hotting up quite a bit towards the lower end of the League One table, and also chat about the games that are taking place on Tuesday night and give our preview and predictions for that. So we'll take a little break, but we'll be back in a second. Welcome back to the Lower League Looks League One podcast. Again, I say it.
Too many L's.
Too many L's, absolutely. It gets me every time. But yeah, welcome back. So this is the review episode. Don't forget, you can check out our preview episode with Sam and Callum coming out later in the week, chatting no doubt about the midweek fixtures, and then looking ahead to the next round of fixtures on Saturday also. But for now, you've got myself and Jamie to keep you company for the next...
the Yorkshire Massive.
Well, the Yorkshire Massive, as you said, yeah. Myself from Barnsley and Jamie from originally from Doncaster. So, yeah, we've got South Yorkshire Pride representative on this podcast. We've chatted a little bit about the top of the league. Should we chat a bit about the bottom, Jamie? And it's heating up a little bit at the bottom of the League One table.
Definitely, yeah. I think it sort of helps to give perspective in terms of the table. There's 10 points separating 14th and 23rd. I'll sort of run down that very quickly. You've got Wickham in 14th on 41 points, Exeter 40, and then a couple of teams on 39. That's Reading and Burton. 3 teams on 38 points, which is Charlton, Cambridge, who we talked about, and Shrewsbury. And then that leads into the bottom 4. Cheltenham on 34 points. Peterborough, not Peterborough. Port Vale on 32. Port Vale on 32. Fleetwood on 31. And then just about hanging on all the way down at bottom is Carlisle on 23. A massive 15 points from safety. So you made me predict if Cambridge were going to stay up. I'll be incredibly bold and say that Carlisle are going down. How about that?
Wow.
15 points off, and there's only 33 points left to play for them. 11 games to go. So, yeah, they're gone. Just wipe them out. We're not bothered about them anymore. Fleetwood picked up a big win at the weekend, 4-2 against Wigan, who are sort of just above that list I read out. They're 13th in the table. So a big win for them. Port Vale and Cheltenham, both in bad patches, obviously. You wouldn't be down there if you weren't, but they have games in hand, which is the important thing. So Cheltenham will start with. They're 4 points behind Shrewsbury with a couple of games in hand. Port Vale 6 points behind Shrewsbury with a couple of games in hand as well. So that's the one I think to keep an eye on in terms of will those game in hands convert into points. That's always the interesting thing. And then one of the games in hand is on Tuesday night. Cheltenham hosting Charlton, and that's a relegation 6-pointer if ever you've heard one, isn't it? I do want to talk about Charlton in a minute because I think that's quite interesting what's happened there. So I'll let you go though. What do you make of this 9-10 team relegation battle?
Yeah, well, I absolutely agree with you in terms of Carlisle being way out of it, if you like. I think that's been the case for quite a while, really. They seem to just be sunk and rotted to the bottom of the League One table. It's simple as it is, really. They've not got enough points on board at the moment. Although when they did come to Oak a few weeks ago, they did play quite well, but they got found out in sort of across a period of 90 minutes, really. Yes, they got the win at Burton sort of less than a week ago, last Tuesday, but it's sort of too little too late, really. And yeah, Carlisle are definitely gone. Fleetwood and Port Vale, for me, have not been too impressed with over the entirety of the season. Fleetwood did win their last game against Wigan, but over the entirety of the season, they have they've only got 31 points from 36 games played, so it's not a lot, really.
I think the thing to pick out with Fleetwood is obviously that win you've mentioned, scoring 4 goals in that one. But the game before that against Port Vale, they were 2-0 down in the 88th minute, and then Jaden Stockley scored in the 88th minute, and then in 90+3. I mean, if that's a sign of a team fighting, then I mean, if that's not a sign, I beg your pardon, for the team's fighting, I don't know what is. They've given themselves every chance with a result like that. So they're pulling it out of nowhere and getting a point against a relegation rival, and then that win to follow it up against Wigan. I mean, they are 7 points off relegation. It's a very tall order because they're one of the teams without any games in hand. So I still think they probably will be condemned to relegation. It's one of those maybe too little, too late. But they're showing signs of life, I think, Seb.
Yeah, I take your point there, definitely. Scoring 4 against Wigan is sort of no mean feat, so we should definitely sort of appreciate that. But it's too little, too late, and there might be questions over Charlie Adam. Was his appointment the right in the first place? did they need a different sort of manager in for that? Really, they picked up a couple of good points. Away to Exeter and then at home to Reading as well. But I think it's just too little, too late for Fleetwood, really.
No, I'd agree.
Port Vale, I'm not really too sure. I'm not sold by them under Dartmoor, really. I don't think it was them. Cheltenham are the ones that I could see escaping. They are, sort of since Darryl Clark's come in, they've definitely improved. And I do think they'll be okay. I think Shrewsbury will drop in.
There you are. There's I would say the bold prediction, but I was going to say exactly the same thing. I reckon out of that bottom four, I think the only team that I can see staying up is Cheltenham. But you say that, you look at their next run of fixtures just briefly. Obviously, Charlton on Tuesday night. Then they've got Oxford away, Barnsley away, Peterborough at home. So, I mean, some really difficult fixtures there. And then it's Fleetwood and Exeter. So, it doesn't get too much easier, and then it becomes 6 pointers rather than you're facing teams at the top end of the table. So, it's not an easy run of fixtures, but those games in hand, I think, will help. Obviously, more games to play, you've got more points to fight for. It's as simple as that, isn't it? And I think they show more signs of positivity than a team like Shrewsbury do that don't really demonstrate much. It's they beat Reading the other week, but that's their only win since the end of January. So there's a lot of teams in poor form, isn't there? I think that's the only way to describe it. There's a lot of teams that are struggling, and a couple of them, I think, will stay up just naturally. That there are so many strugglers in the division this season that a couple of the strugglers will ultimately manage to keep themselves above the red line.
Yeah, but there's a lot happening in the league, and as you sort of mentioned a little bit earlier when you went through the points that the various clubs had on board, it's very tight down at the bottom. It's very tight at the bottom. It's very tight at the top, and there's just a little bit of a lull of teams sort of in the middle, really. Not really fighting for anything as such. Probably from Lincoln down in from Lincoln in 10th down to, let's say, Reading down in 16th. There's just under 20 points between them, but none of the teams really in that sort of patch have got anything really that they could realistically be fighting for, whether that is the fighting to stay in the league or the fighting to push for the playoffs. Realistically,
I think it's one of those. I mean,
just going to finish.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Exeter in 15th, they're only 6 points clear relegation. It's one of that is so tight. I think you look at Wickham, they're 7 points clear, but it's the fact that it's Wickham. I feel like you just sort of assume safety, and there's so many teams below them that they will be fine. Wigan, Northampton, Bristol in that sort of mid-table selection, and then I think Lincoln is the only one maybe I'd sort of query in that they're 8 points off the playoffs, but there's a lot of teams in between them. That's the thing, isn't it? There seems to be a lot of belief in the squad, in what's coming out of the squad and out of the manager's mouth, but also in the fan base. There seems to be a real belief sort of around the LNER Stadium at the minute. But 8 points is a big jump to make when there's Oxford, Blackpool, Leyton Orient above you fighting for the same spot. So yeah, I think they do fall into that mid-table melee, I guess. They're just the teams that we've got to march and there's nothing left to fight for.
No, that is true. But it is very tight at the bottom. But I think one club that you mentioned a little bit earlier that is slowly starting to drag their way out of it is Charlton.
Good old Nathan Jones, Seb. Good old Nathan Jones. I've never. I'm not a Charlton fan, obviously. I had sort of a disdain for Charlton because they were a few years ago now, back when Donny were in the League One playoffs. All those many years ago when we were a League One team, and we were knocked out in a penalty shootout in the semi-final. John Marquis missed the penalty that. Now with Bristol Rovers, missed the penalty that sort of ended our hopes there. So ever since then, I was a bit. I don't like Charlton, this, that, and the other. They were the team that cost us, but they've got Nathan Jones, and as I've said when they signed him, I'm a big fan of Nathan Jones, and after that awful run, 18 games we had to win before Derby last midweek. They're suddenly, with a few draws either side of that, they're 5 games unbeaten now, and they're suddenly on a halfway decent run that they've beat a team at the very top of the table, and they've got 4 draws as well in their last 5 games. So it looks like Nathan Jones is doing a great job.
Eventually.
Well, that's it.
Taking his time, Auntie, though. Yeah.
I think these things do take time. I think that's the problem with sacking someone and getting a new manager in February, March, in that there is no time to turn it around. I think maybe the good thing about getting rid of Appleton when they did was that Nathan Jones has had time to make these adjustments, and now look where they are. They're 18, 4 points clear, whereas before they're in the relegation zone, weren't they? So they've made themselves a little bit of a buffer, and I think the main go on.
No, you can carry on. Go on. I'm gonna go on. Yeah, you go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, lastly, really on the Charlton thing was that sort of the passion, because I saw that a few clips of what happened at full time with Nathan Jones going over to the fans doing the Jurgen Klopp trademark fist pumps.
Wait.
Yeah, but it was just watching that. I mean, you obviously not a Charlton fan, but it's great to see stuff like that because he looks so sort of in so much passion about it, and the fans obviously have that passion, and it seems like he sort of instilled that in the players. And I think with Nathan Jones, he's one of those managers where you have to buy into his project. I think maybe that's why it works so well at Luton, that it's a project to buy into, and I feel like that's maybe what will work at Charlton for him, is that there's something to buy into, in that it's a rebuild, and he's at the core of that, and he's leading this team on that journey. And the scenes at full time when they beat Derby, it was, 18 games you got to win. It's unbelievable. And they managed to do it eventually, and sort of the tide's beginning to turn for them. And just a few good results, and they're up and out of the relegation zone. So positive signs, really positive signs for Charlton and Nathan Jones. But go on, Seb. What were you gonna interject some negativity into my?
No, I was gonna inject some positivity.
Oh, that's all right then.
I've just reminded myself of Charlton's next 3 fixtures. Do we hear them?
Yeah, go on.
So they play. Well, you mentioned this. They play on Tuesday away at Cheltenham. Then on the Saturday at home to Carlisle.
Right.
Then on the following Saturday away to Fleetwood.
That's the 9 points.
So yeah, so three of the 6 teams that are below them in the league, they face it in the next 10 days.
Yeah,
it's mega, really, and especially after the good run of form that they're happening in probably the past 2-3 weeks. That could be proper springboard momentum. A good opportunity to get points on the board before you face tougher teams. But they couldn't have asked for any easier games, and I mean that in a nice way, You
don't. You can say you can. There's no easier games at this level, but maybe there is.
No,
there's easier games, isn't there?
There's easier games, and I don't think Charlton could have asked for 3 any easier games to have in the next round of fixtures.
I think maybe that's the important thing, that they've kicked on when they have, that they're in good form as this run comes. And yeah, you fill me with more optimism on the Nathan Jones train, that they've got 3 fixtures like that coming up. And yeah, I think they're in the best position out of the teams down there, and I'd be staggered if they drop back down.
Yeah, I'd agree as well. I think they're the best place at the moment, and with sort of upcoming fixtures, they're all really in their favour. So
yeah,
can't really see them getting dragged into it at all, really. We spoke about the top, we spoke about the bottom, we spoke about Garry Monk. I guess finally, before we leave you for this week's episode, we've got a couple of midweek games this time around. How do you see them going? We'll start with a big one at the bottom, which is Charlton and Cheltenham. How do you see it going, and then what do you think the final score will be?
Final score. I've got to pick the final score. But I reckon Charlton will win, believe it or not. Everything what we've just been saying there. Obviously, Cheltenham aren't. I don't think they're a rollover. They're sort of a team that need to pick up points. It's a proper relegation 6 point of this one. As I feel like every weekend there's at least one of them at the minute. But yeah, big game. I reckon Charlton will be okay. I'll go for 2-1. There you are. There's my score prediction for you. I'll have to write these down. See how good we look, and maybe
on the
maybe have to put £1 on it. Maybe that'll be the
on the Thursday show they do predictions, and I'm
Yeah,
not quite sure how many Sam and Callum have got right in the past few weeks.
I'm just living off my Charlton one from last week that they beat Derby. But go on, what do you reckon for this one then?
I'll go with a scrappy 1-0 to Charlton.
Oh.
Yeah, maybe. Basically, the two teams that I think will stay up coming out of the season. But Charlton have the better form of the two. No, turn back. I'll go 1-1.
Oh, 1-1. Wow.
I'll go 1-1. Yeah. Yeah, I'll go 1-1.
Bit of jeopardy at least.
Well, 2 goals. That's a positive, you know.
Yeah.
2 goals.
No, I mean not that our predictions are different, that we've not both gone for the Charlton win.
Yeah, true. We can't say we're copying each other or anything like that. And then there's two big games that sort of involve the clubs towards the top. One is certainly bigger than the other. What I'll do, I'll build it up.
Yeah, go on. We got it. Yeah.
We've started low. No disrespect. With Charlton and Cheltenham and Charlton, and we'll go up one gear, and we'll chat about Peterborough and Northampton. So that is the second of the third game taking place on Tuesday. As things stand, it's 5th versus 12th.
Yeah.
Who do you favour for this one, Jamie?
Well, I think it's one of those where we mentioned a couple of minutes ago, didn't we, that Northampton are in that mid-table. That's where they are level. That they're not fighting for promotion. They're not fighting for relegation. They're just in the middle, and that's where Northampton are. I don't sort of subscribe to the belief that it's difficult to motivate players when you're in that sort of situation, because they're footballers. They want to win games of football, but there's no getting around the fact that Peterborough have more to play for. They're on 62 points, 7th place Oxford on 57. So they're only 5 points above sort of falling out of the playoffs, if you want to put it that way. And they're 7 points off the automatic. So they're sort of winning this one for them, which I think they will get. I'll let you go first on the score this time. But I reckon it's an important game for them in terms of cementing, I guess, their position in the playoffs. They can't afford to slip up in games like this, especially at home against a team who haven't got much to play for.
Yeah, because there's a slight gap between Peterborough in 5th and currently Stevenage in 6th. But this sort of game,
I think this one, if they win this one, it puts them 5 points clear of 6th with Stevenage, and then that makes a gap, doesn't it? In that you've got the top 5, and then the fight is just for the last playoff spot, because Peterborough have extended themselves above that. So big game in that respect, and I reckon they'll pick up the win. I'll let you go first on the score.
Yeah, I agree. I think Peterborough will win, and I'll go for 2-1 with Poku on the score sheet. Then
we can't pick scores.
No, just wanted to score after scoring last week.
Yeah, well, I was going to go
at the weekend as well.
I was going to go for 2-1 myself. I'm just checking how bad their defense is, because I'll be different. I'll go for 3-1 then, just to add a bit of spice.
Bit of jeopardy, nice. And then so we've done the bottom level, we've done the middle level, and now we've gone to the top level in terms of fixtures on Tuesday. And that top level is
big Bolton against the 4th best team in South Yorkshire.
He went there, did he? He went there. We've got Barnsley versus Bolton, which is, as things stand, currently a clash of 4th against 3rd. Just for some context about this as well, Bolton have played 35 Barnsley have played 36. Bolton currently have the same points as Derby in second, who have also played 36. So Bolton have one game in hand, which is the game against Barnsley on Tuesday night. Barnsley have two games in hand, one of which is the Bolton game on Tuesday night. Another is Stevenage, which will take place at a later date. So it's very tight in there, and it's a big game with lots riding on it. And I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, I'll be honest. But while I have a little think, which way do you think it'll go, Jamie?
Well, I think before I say that, Barnsley only one loss in their last 16 games. I think the stat to pick out from their perspective. Bolton, on the other hand, those two poor results that we seem to have mentioned a couple of times, they've bounced back from that, as we mentioned, against Cambridge, and sort of back on the right side of things, if not in a good run, because there was a few poor draws, drawing games that should have been winning before those couple of losses. Really, really difficult, this one. It's one of those, and they're so obviously so close to each other. Only one goal separates them on goal difference. Barnsley have scored 2 more, conceded 1 more. It's just there's nothing to separate them really, in any sort of meaning. I'm not going to be boring and say it'll be a draw. I think that would be one. I'll go for the home team. That's a safe bet. Good. So I'll go for Barnsley, the home side. A win for Barnsley will put them level on points with the automatic places, with, like we said, that game in hand, which would be then just the game in hand would be overall 3 teams above them. So a huge, huge game, isn't it? We talked about relegation 6-pointers, a promotion 6-pointer. I'll go for Barnsley. I'll go 2-1 and an 80-plus minute winner.
Nice. Yeah, Barnsley had to
something for you to shout about on the commentary.
Yeah, well, we have been scoring a lot of late goals recently. The more I sort of think about this, the more I sort of chat about it, the more I sort of realise to what extent how big this game actually is. There's lots riding on it. You know, it's Bolton's game in hand. It's Barnsley's game in hand. Something has to give somewhere. And I just can't see it being a boring 0-0. So I'll go with 3-2 under the open lights to Barnsley.
I think that's wishful. 5 goals. 5-goal thriller.
I think it'll be really entertaining.
I think it'll be a great game. It's one of those that you want to watch, even though it's on iFollow, isn't it? It's one of those that it just screams big game. It's what you watch football for, isn't it? A game like that, third versus.
And even if Barnsley go 1-0 down, I'm not too worried because we showed in the game against Derby when we went 1-0 down, and then showed away at the weekend when we went 1-0 down and then 2-1 down to Wycombe, but we came back from losing position. So I'm not too worried, but I'm hoping after we've now just picked it all up that it doesn't finish 0-0. But I think there'll be goals and there'll definitely be entertainment.
I reckon so.
We shall see. And I think that's about it, Jamie. That's about it for this week's review episode on the League One Lower League Look podcast.
There we go.
Got there in the end. We'll be back same time next week with a review of looking at the Saturday fixtures within the third tier of the English football leagues. But until then, you can listen to Callum and Sam do their preview show ahead of the weekend's fixtures. So you can check out that on our Spotify and YouTube and anywhere else where you get your podcast from. But for now, for me, Jamie, we'll see you next week.
See you later.